Baptist Church. You all seem so far away. Kevin, you're going to have fun tonight. So, I do have some announcements to remind you of. Don't forget to sign up for the Christmas Praise Dinner. Those sign-ups are in the foyers. Please sign up for those. And then as well, the community Thanksgiving meal is coming up this week, and if you are able to make some desserts for that, to have them there by Wednesday the 22nd. As well as the toy closet is coming up. I saw a couple toys that were over here this morning, and I think a couple came in more tonight. So if you can help support that, that is coming up on December 9th. So please, if you can bring a donation of a new or gently used toys. Are there any other announcements this evening? Yes, if you want to give me money, no, I'm just kidding. If you want to donate towards the toy closet, you can give finances for that as well, so then they can go just purchase toys, because you know what all the kids want nowadays. So, but if you're able to do that, that would be wonderful. Are there any other announcements this evening? All right, let's stand up and shake hands with one another. Go to the Lord in prayer, and then we're going to sing some songs, and then Kevin's going to come share about his trip. So, but for right now, let's just center our hearts and our minds on the Lord. Dear Heavenly Father, God, thank you for who you are. Thank you for a great morning this morning. Thank you for the opportunity that we can just come and just celebrate your Son, Jesus. And God, I pray, especially for the Christmas shoeboxes that were given this morning, God, I pray that you continue to use those in a mighty way to reach people across this world with the message of Jesus. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Good evening. Good evening. Am I still on? Okay, I am on. Okay. As we gather together, let's sing As We Gather Together. Let's stand. We gather together to ask the Lord's blessing. He chastens and hastens, will to make known the wicked oppressing. Now cease from distressing, sing praises to his name. He forgets not his own. Beside us to guide us, our God with us joining, ordaining, maintaining his kingdom divine. So from the beginning, the fight we were winning. Thou, Lord, wast at our side, the glory be thine. We all do extol thee, thou leader in battle, and pray that thou still our defender wilt be. Let thy congregation escape tribulation, thy name be ever praised. O Lord, make us free. Well, you sound like you're really far away. Is anybody out there? Are you there? Boy, you're in for it tonight, Kevin. We're going to stay standing. We only got 2 more songs to go. 638 if you want to turn into your book, but we don't have to because it's For the Beauty of the Earth. For the beauty of the earth, for the glory of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human love, brother, sister, parent, child, friends on earth and friends above, for our gentle thoughts and mild. Lord of all, to thee we raise hymns, our hymn of grateful praise. For thyself best gift divine, to our race so freely give. For that great, great love of thine, peace on earth and joy in heaven. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. And now, what are we doing this week? Thanksgiving, right? Shopping? Who are doing the Black Friday shopping? Anybody? You're the only crazy person in the group. Did that once. You know what? Yeah. Okay, one more song. Here we go. Give thanks. Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One. Give thanks because he's given Jesus Christ, his Son. because he's given Jesus Christ, his Son. And now let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich, because of what the Lord has done for us. And now let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich, because of what the Lord has done for us. Give thanks. Give thanks. Give thanks. Thank you. You may be seated. And now, from downtown Vandalia, and what is it, West Randolph Street, Dr. Kevin Childers.
Wow, thank you for the applause. I appreciate that. Way to get them all warmed up for me there, Bob. Yeah, there we go. Okay, well, I am here tonight, of course, to talk about a mission trip I just got back from. About a month ago, we went to Brazil. And this was a mission trip that was kind of a combination between the IBSA, which of course is the Illinois Baptist State Association, and the Brazilian Baptist Convention. We did this together as a team for this trip that we went on. Now, read you a verse. We've got to have a text before we have any kind of a talk on Sunday nights. But you shall be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and even to the remotest parts of the earth. The remotest parts of the earth. I've been there. At least at times it seemed that way, that's for sure. A couple things just about missions before we get started here, because, of course, this was just a short-term mission, an 8-day mission, a little different from some of the long-term missions that people go on. But did you know that back in 1800, when Bill Brown was born, only 1% of Christians lived outside of North America and Western Europe? I mean, you got that? 99% of Christianity was in this area, North America and Western Europe. But now it's changed, because in 2000, 70% of Christians live outside of those regions. That's a big change, isn't it? Which tells us a couple things. Number one, of course, in Western Europe, Christianity is going down. North America, it's really rising around the rest of the world. Of the 50 largest churches in the world, not a single one's in North America. And if you want to look at the largest Christian communities in the world today, don't look at the Bible Belt in North America. You look in Latin America and Africa. These are where the church is really growing and really growing. And so this next cartoon is kind of is really appropriate, I think. You read that? Thanks for traveling thousands of miles to teach me your Christian ways. Now I'm going as a missionary to America. I hear there's a real need there. And there's actually a lot of truth to that, don't you think? Because and it's a fact that an example, Nigeria, which for years was considered to be ripe missionary ground, now is one of the largest mission outpouring. I'm not saying that right. One of the countries that gives the most missionaries that goes out of their country. You catch it? I said that really wrong, I think, but for every one missionary that goes to Nigeria, Nigeria sends 5 missionaries out. So things are changing. Things are changing. And part of it, I think, is because I think we have done missions better over the past several decades. At one time, missionary work was kind of imperialistic. We would go forth to put an American church in the middle of Africa and want them to worship like Americans, and we tried to impose our culture on other people. But now it's more of a cooperation. And for the last several decades, mission work has been using the 3 self formula that we've been using. And the goals have been, number one, we want them to be self-propagating, we want them to be self-supporting, and self-governing, which is kind of what Paul did. When he did mission work, he would go out, he'd start a church, he'd plant a church, and then he'd leave, because he would expect the people there to grow their church and then to start sister churches in the surrounding area. You know, Americans can start a church in Africa, but Africans are the ones that can grow churches in Africa. And so the reason I bring this up is because Brazil is a really good example of how we've done things right, I think. For years, Southern Baptists sent missionary after missionary to Brazil. We don't do that anymore. Now, part of it is we don't have as much money as we used to, but the main part is they are doing so well there. Baptist growth in Brazil is very good, and they're doing a terrific job in Brazil. The Brazilian Baptist Convention is growing and doing great work. There's one area they haven't hit very well, and that's the Amazon River basin. That part has not been hit very well, and so this mission I went on was to help them a little bit in that area. But Brazilian Baptist work has really done quite well over the years. And the people who were with us and who really planned this trip were, I don't know how well you can see back there, but this is Kathy and Jeff Deasy. They spent 11 years as missionaries in Brazil, and then they spent 12 years as missionaries in Kenya. So they've been mission work for a long time. They just recently retired. He now works in Springfield at the IBSA in the financial area. He's an assistant director of some term, but they haven't been back to Brazil since they were missionaries there about 15 years ago. So they were the ones that kind of headed it up from the American side. You got to have an obligatory picture of where I went here. There's Brazil. Okay, you got that? Now, and by the way, we told them going down there that we're Americans. They looked at us like we were kind of nuts because they are Americans too. You know, our country is the United States, but they're as much Americans as we are, they felt like, because South America is the same as North America, except a little bit farther down south. So we didn't call ourselves Americans down there. We called ourselves people from the United States. But we went up the Amazon on this, which is a pretty nice-looking boat, although believe me, with 50 people on board, it's really crowded. This boat, which is called the National Missionary, was once owned by Illinois Baptist. And once the Brazilian Baptists started growing and doing so well, and we said, we don't need to really send any more missionaries here, we gave them this boat. So this belongs now to the Brazilian Baptist Convention, and they use this on mission work up and down the Amazon River. Picture of two of the, I give you their names, but I can't pronounce them, but these are two missionaries from the Brazilian Baptist Convention. And we teamed up with them, some other lay people in Brazil, and the about 50-50. This trip was about 50% United States of Americans and 50% Brazilian Americans. And throughout this, we tried to be conscious of trying to do things trying not to do missions to them, but to do missions with them. Does that make sense? We were trying to, as we approached these Brazilian people, we weren't trying to impose our American cultural Christianity on them. We were trying to work with the Brazilians to help these people in the Amazon. Now, when we flew into a town called Manaus, and this is this is really the only large city on the Amazon. And believe me, the Amazon's a big river. You know, the Mississippi, that's a little creek compared to the Amazon. This is the only large city on it. And it's really, it was not in really good shape, most of what we saw. There's all kinds of trash and garbage, and it was kind of run down, even though it was a large city. But that's not to say that Brazil is not a modern country. I mean, much of Brazil has nice modern cities and everything. So the part that we were in wasn't, but that doesn't mean Brazil as a whole is a poor, backward country by any means. But we got to Manaus, and this is just a picture of the marketplace here. I don't know if you can see very well. She just happened to be in the picture. See this person over here? This was one of our interpreters. She was a Brazilian woman who was in graduate school, and she's a Christian. She gave up a week to be one of our translators on this journey. We had about 8 translators or interpreters. The interesting thing about her is she is almost completely deaf. She was born with some sort of a problem, and she's been losing her hearing all of her life, and she's almost completely deaf. So here she is, a translator who's deaf. She translated by reading lips. So she had to read lips in Portuguese and read lips in English. I think that's pretty tough. So kudos to you, though. All right, now, as we went through Manaus, I saw this old building, and I said, what is that? And the translator, not her, the other translator said, that's an important old building. You're welcome. Okay, it's just a picture of everybody on the the boat before we took off. That's me, the good-looking guy over here on the left. This team we had was, we had 24 people from Illinois. Actually, one was from Georgia, but 24 from the United States, 26 from Brazil. The people from the United States represented 13 different churches. From Brazil, it represented 8 different churches. So about half of those are Brazilian Christians, half of them are United States of American Christians, and that was the team that went on here. Now, the boat was a nice boat, and it was air-conditioned, thank the Lord, but it was pretty crowded. The bottom part of the boat was the area that was the boys' dorm. We had 30 men on board, and so we had to put all the suitcases on board, and this is where we would gather. And then we also had, that was also what we ate our meals there. The men and the women, we ate our meals there. And in the same room, we also had our meetings, so we had meetings there, and that's where we slept at night. So we got like sardines in there, quite frankly. At night, we would have to take our mattresses, and we'd line them up on the floor, these twin mattresses, one beside another all the way on the floor. And then we'd start putting the hammocks above so that we could all fit in there. And then in the morning, we would take the mattresses out, and we're starting to haul them upstairs. This guy's going to grab it. So we're taking our mattresses. I can't believe we didn't lose one in the river, folks. Cannot believe we didn't lose one. But we'd have to take all the mattresses out, store them up, and then we'd have to bring the tables and the chairs down, bring them back down into our room, and line things up for breakfast. After that, we'd have to take the tables out, put them up, store them up out of the way, set things up for our morning devotional meeting. After that, we'd have to take the chairs out, store them upstairs, and get this room ready. Half of it was for the dentist, half of it was for me, the eye doctor. And we'd have to get the dental equipment out and ready, have to get the eye doctor stuff out and ready, and then we'd have to take the other stuff. And we'd have to go up to the village and take all the medical gear and everything else for the children and the evangelism and everything up to the village, come back down. I saw patients in the morning from 8 to 12:30. Then I'd have to break down all my stuff on my half so that people can come in and eat. Then they'd leave. I have to put my stuff back up for the afternoon. After we saw the afternoon patients, break that down so we could get things set up for dinner. Then we'd have to break that down because we had to get ready for the devotional time. Then we go up to the village for worship service, come back down. We'd have to take everything out, put it apart, bring the mattresses back out, and get ready for bed. It was a busy day, okay? It was a busy day every day. We'd have to do all this. And again, very crowded, but we got everything done. Here we're preparing just for the week ahead, we're packaging the medications, the pills, the different things, getting ready to go. This woman right here, if you can see her, 82 years old. 82 years old. It's her 20th mission. When she was in her mid-50s, her husband died. She always kind of wanted to travel, but he never really did. So once he passed away, she decided she was going to travel, but if she was going to do it, she was going to do it for some good. So she goes on mission trips. And 82 years old, she's still going on mission trips. And I mean, she's not a trained nurse or anything, but she sure was helpful. And she was a real trooper. And we had him as young as 16 years old, too. Over here, you might know him. He spoke at this church before. That's Doug DeVore. He was the head of Carmi Children's Home for many years. And he went with us on the trip, too. So, I took 1,000 pairs of glasses down there. 1,000 pairs of glasses down there. So, and if you've ever been to my office, you know there's a box out front where people leave their used eyeglasses. And a lot of what I took were glasses that people dropped there, and we took them and cleaned them and fixed them up and packaged them and took those down there. So if you ever dropped off a pair of glasses at my office, there may be some guy along the Amazon wearing them tonight, and very grateful that you did. Here we're packaging, getting things ready. You might notice that I'm sitting here watching them do the work. So, and I was doing it really well, I think, too. Okay, now, when we got to Manaus, we got on the boat, the Amazon River there is 9 miles wide. Now, that's a wide river. You know, that's more like a sea, if you ask me. But it also is during dry season, and so you can see how far below the shoreline we are. It's about 45 feet below the shoreline. And I don't know how much water it takes to fill up 45 feet for 9 miles, but that's a lot of water right there. But we were, and you also notice almost all throughout this, the sides are just pretty much straight up and down. So you don't go wading into the Amazon at any time. You don't do any baptisms in the Amazon because it goes straight down. And it also makes it hard to carry medical equipment up to the villages when it's like this as well. So again, we were at dry season, and just another picture, a lot of erosion going on there as well. Okay, now the people that we were going to see are called the river people, and they live in scattered villages along the Amazon. There are thousands of these villages, and they're pretty much off the grid. A few of them will have power, but very few. That's the one area of Brazil that really hasn't been reached for Christ very well because they are so out there on their own. You can't get to them except slowly through boat. In fact, when we got to Manaus, the first thing we did was head 30 hours upstream, 30 hours to get to these villages. And that was just to get to the start of them. In fact, we went too far. We ended up going 34 hours because the captain of the ship knew the village by sight. But we're so low, he couldn't see the village very well. We went 2 hours too far. And they don't have very good signage on the river. So when he finally figured out he'd gone too far, he turned around, and every time we come to somebody, hey, is this Vandalia? No. We finally got where we were going to go, but it took a long way, and these river people are out in the middle of nowhere, really. Some of them live on villages up top, but then a lot of them live in homes that are floating homes on the river itself. And as the river rises, the home rises too, and as the river lowers, the house lowers as well. So that you see a lot of these just isolated out by themselves, and these people get everywhere by rowboat. And if it took us 30 hours by a big boat to get out there, imagine how long it would take them by rowboat to get to Manaus, which is the closest city. So if I had somebody that needed cataract surgery, forget it. They can't get to Manaus. There's no way. That's the nearest cataract surgeon. And by rowboat, I don't know how long that would take to get there. They just can't do it. Here's some people. You see that you got their laundry out here. You notice a satellite dish here. The government has tried to do some things for these people. And so in some of these villages, they would put a satellite dish and a generator for a phone. So that is the village phone that is down there. So if somebody needs to make a call, they can make a call. They will sit there and they will bathe, wash their dishes, eliminate their waste, everything into the Amazon. We were told, don't touch anything. Don't touch the water because it'll kill you. Well, of course, they built up immunity over the years, so they can do that. But they will take most of their water and everything from the Amazon. Now, the first town we went to was called Liberdale. This is the school at Liberdale. If a town was going to have a nice building, it would be the school. Because they do take education seriously in Brazil, even among the river people. I was shocked to find out how high the literacy rate was there. Almost everybody knew how to read and write and knew their letters. And they take school. In fact, in Brazil, free schooling all the way through. You can go to college, go to graduate school, it doesn't cost you a dime. Now, on the other hand, their income tax is about 90%. But at least the schooling's free. So that's the school at Liberdale. We went to 4 different villages, and the reason we picked these villages was because at each of these villages, they had 2 missionaries called radicals. Now, the radicals were patterned after the Southern Baptist Journeyman program. If you're familiar with the Journeyman program, young people take 2 years and go out and do mission work. The radicals in Brazil are young men and women of Brazil who take 2 years out of their life and do mission work. And along this area, they would go to one of these villages and they would live just like the villagers for 2 years. Live with them, work with them, get to know them, and try to reach people for Christ. So we would go to villages that had these radical missionaries there, either 2 young men or 2 young women. And part of what we were doing was really to help them, to give them credibility, to give them whatever help we can in the work that they're doing. And then once we left, they were there to continue to work. You know, one problem with short-term missions is if it's just a drive-by thing, you go there, you convince a person to say a prayer, and then we say bye-bye and we're off. Well, you know, what happens? Did they really make a commitment? How are they going to grow? Well, the radicals are there to work with the people who make a commitment, to disciple them, and to continue the work that we tried to help them with during this short time. So this was the first town we went to, Liberdale. Now, one of the biggest problems we had was getting to the village. Again, the water was low, so it was a real chore to get all of our people and tables and chairs and medical equipment up to the village. Well before dawn, the people of the village and the crew of the boat would try to rig up some sort of stairs or rope ladders or something that we could get up there with. And it was some of it was pretty precarious. I mean, it was really difficult. That was just always one of the big problems of the day, the accessibility to get up there. Once we would get up there, this is kind of typical. Now, this is the telephone for the town there. See that? That's the town telephone. You can climb those steps, and if it's working, you can make a phone call if you need to. Almost all of the houses would be on stilts, even up above, even up on top, because sometimes the Amazon would flood, and they would have to be higher than normal. Most of the buildings were not painted, just wooden buildings. If they were painted, it was usually really bright colors. Oh, that's a picture of me. I include this picture because it has something very interesting. There is a dog going into my head through my right ear here. So, you know, you just don't get that every day. Aren't you glad you came to church tonight, by the way? See? Yeah. Once we would get to a village, people would come from surrounding villages. Word would get out, and people would row across the river from other villages, or they would come from miles around from other villages in the area. And it was, by the way, it was very hot there. It got up to 110 degrees. But it was a wet heat. So it only rained a couple days. It was the dry season, but a couple days it rained. And when it rained, baby, it rained. I'll tell you that. But the weather was pretty warm. If you want to sweat, this is the place to go. Now, one of the things we did again is we would have a medical clinic up usually in the schools where we would set it up. We brought a doctor from Metropolis, and we had a couple nurses that were with us, and they saw pretty much everything. One of the biggest things they saw was malnutrition. So he was handing out vitamins like candy. But, you know, some guy had that very morning had chopped his leg with an axe or a hatchet, and they did pretty much everything. All kinds of medical things were done. This is our doctor over here carrying 2 suitcases full of drugs up there, tables and chairs being taken up, getting set up in the morning. This is the nurse. For some reason, she has a bag of drugs on her head. My guess is she probably took a 1 or 2 before she took that picture. But the medical clinic was one of the things we did there. Now, the second village we have here, Esperanza. This is a village that, by the way, you're going to thank me. You're going to thank me here because I'm about to give you a good sermon illustration. In case you ever have a devotion to give or something, you need an illustration for it. Write this down right here. Every village we went to, whoa. Okay, that's not the illustration. Okay, every village we went to, we had difficulties, I said, getting up the slopes because they were so steep. Every village we went to, it was more difficult than the one before to get up there. The first day was hard. The next day was harder. The next day was hardest. The third day was pretty much impossible. And yet at each village, we had more salvations at each village. So the more work we had to put into it, the more results we got out. Is that a sermon illustration or what? So just put that someplace in your files in case you ever need it. I'm not really sure what to make of it, but it could be used somewhere. This girl by here, by the way, their clothing wasn't really nice, but they wore their best stuff when we were there. It was like the circus was in town, you know. And the clothing was clean, everything was clean, but it was really dingy looking because the Amazon is a really muddy river and they wash in the Amazon. But anyway, this is a girl, and she was giving us a little tour through her village. And I wanted a picture of her because she was the first person to be baptized in this village. And she shared a concern of hers that her parents wanted to be baptized, but they were afraid they might be shunned by the other villagers. And so she asked us to pray for her family, that they would have the courage to step forward and follow her example in baptism. So, if you ever run out of things to pray for, think about people overseas that have needs that we don't even think about. This is a real concern for this girl, and again, she was the first one to be baptized in her village, and she's just really hoping and praying that her parents will have the courage to follow her like they actually want to. Now, the government, again, tries to do things for some of these villages, at least the larger ones. They will buy these rain buckets and put those in some of them, and there's a hose down there, so you don't have to get all your water from the Amazon. It's hard to get there in the dry season, and so I just want to picture that. That's the way they get some of the water for the villages. And again, you see all these other shacks on stilts here. By the way, the shacks they live in, there's no appliances because they don't have power. No appliances. They don't really have furniture that I saw in any that I looked into either. They have hammocks where they sleep. They have shelves for their stuff, but it's pretty bare. It's pretty bare what they have. Here's another home. It's a larger one here. You know, it's just painted. When they paint them, they paint them nice bright colors. And the families tend to live together. In this house, you have the mom and the dad and the kids, but also the grandpas and the grandmas and the uncles and the aunts and the cousins. They all live in this house. They all tend to want to live together. This is a house that's not quite so nice. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's pretty run down. There's not much to it there. And here's a good lesson for me, and that is, you know, I was there for 8 days, and so I'm an expert on Brazil, you know, at least compared to you people. But, you know, you meet one person from a country, and the first thing you think is, well, all the people are like that. If somebody came to this country and they just spent 1 day with us, and the first person they met was Matt, they would think every American is a hyperactive soccer lover. And that's simply not true, you know, but they would think that because Matt's the first one they met. So here's an example of how I fell for the same thing. I got to see patients on the ship. I'm lucky there. Air conditioned, okay? And people would come in, and I noticed that none of them had shoes. I thought, these poor people, you know, they're wearing their best clothes. They don't have shoes. And I'm going to remember to tell my church family they don't have shoes. Because so I was mentioning this at lunch to some of the other people down there, some of the other people that went with me. I said, man, it just really surprised me that they didn't have shoes. He said, every one of them had shoes. We just made them take them off so they wouldn't get mud all over the boat. So here I am judging an entire country because my country people said, don't you get mud on our boat, you take your shoes off. So I think that's a good lesson for us. You know, I want to be careful never to say, I'll tell you what Brazilians are like. I just knew a handful for a couple days. So, okay, now I mentioned the medical part. We also had dentists who were with us. Now the dentists were Brazilians. These two here, there's a woman and a man, husband and wife. They had a nice setup. They had half of our bedroom, dining room, meeting room. Half of it was for them, for dental work. And they could do anything. They pulled teeth a lot. They filled a lot of teeth. They could take x-rays. But these were two people who had a nice, successful practice in Rio de Janeiro. And it was a very successful practice, but they felt called by God to stop making money and to give. And they sold their practice, and they spent full time now going to poor places, giving free dental care. And they're something. I mean, you talk to them, you know, you wonder, are Brazilians, are they really Christians? You talk to people like Brazilians like that, and you're thinking, are we really Christians? You know, because they are really sold out to what they're doing here. I just thought you'd want a picture of him pulling a tooth. I don't know why. I thought that would be interesting to you. Okay, third village we went to. You notice we're walking up. Again, they put down ladders. I don't know how the villagers do it. but they wear flip-flops mostly. They do have shoes, but they're mostly flip-flops. They go up and down barefoot in flip-flops and everything without any ladders. But they had to put ladders out and ropes out for us Americans to get up there. It was really difficult. On the right, we've got yet another sermon illustration. So get your notebooks out, another sermon illustration for you to save. Next time you're called upon to give a devotion, I don't know how this is going to work into a devotion, but you'll find a way. See that plant right there? We were convinced that was marijuana. Looks like marijuana, right? You people saying yes, how do you know what marijuana looks like? And I'm looking at you. You were saying, oh, yes, that looks like marijuana. My goodness. Well, all of us Illinois Southern Baptists were all gathered around this little plant. We did everything but smoke it to prove that that was wild marijuana. And finally, a villager came up and through the interpreter said, no, that's a vegetable. We eat its root. So somehow that's a sermon illustration. I don't know how you would use it, but we were convinced it was marijuana when it was a harmless vegetable, okay? So, again, use that someday. In this village, on the left, we've got, that's an old Catholic church. Catholicism is the traditional big religion in Brazil, but along the villages, they don't practice it anymore, and that's been empty for a long time. On the right, I don't know how well you can see it, but that's got about 50 million bananas on this tree and a big fruit at the bottom. This is really amazing. But the villagers would eat by fishing in the Amazon and by just walking out into the jungle because there's all kinds of fruit, papaya and bananas and everything just hanging out, easy to get food out there. Here's another just picture of the villagers at their home. This house right here, not a house. This next one right here, there we go. That is a church. That's the church building. Years ago, Illinois Baptists built that church. Still being used today. They don't have church services on a regular basis. There's no pastor there. But since the radicals have shown up, they're using it again. And so I just thought that's kind of cool that years ago, other Illinois Baptists went down and built that, and we were able to use it when we went there. We used that to do medical services on, and we also had worship service that night. Every night we would have worship service, and on the left here, the man who's getting ready to preach, I was hoping she'd be here tonight, but she's had a wedding in the family. That's Lois and George Peck's ex-pastor, Brent Conley there, and so he knows George and Lois really well. He had some trouble with the interpreters. Speaking with an interpreter is a little difficult. You got to be careful what you say, just like you have to be careful with certain things. We were warned, don't do this. You know, what's this mean to us? Everything's okay, right? But there, it's like it would be showing somebody the middle finger in the United States. You know, so you don't give them the okay. You don't say, I'd like to introduce this person to you. You say, I want to present this person to you. Because if you say, I'd like to introduce them to you, that has a sexual connotation. The same thing is you don't say, I'm excited to meet you. I'm excited to be here. You say, I'm happy to be here. Or it has a sexual connotation. Now, we didn't have to worry about that because we used an interpreter. But there was a time when Brent was preaching that night. And let me tell you, the Brazilian Baptists are very conservative. They don't drink. They don't smoke. They're very conservative in what they practice as far as those things go. And he was kind of getting wound up in his sermon. He was doing a good job. And finally he said, I'm smoking now. And the interpreter stopped and looked at him because he can't say I'm smoking in front of all these children. And he didn't know how to interpret that. You know, what he meant was, I'm getting fired up. And that probably would be bad too. You're an arsonist? I mean, you know, you've got to be. So we were told, don't call them translators. They're not really translating what we're saying. They're interpreters. They're supposed to interpret what we're saying. And so they may not be translating word for word what they're saying. They may have to make it better, you know. So, so the interpreter he got really shocked by why the pastor would say he's smoking. That's a horrible, horrible example. You know, another thing, cultural differences, is they're very touchy-feely down there. And you know I'm the same way. But they're close talkers. They're touching you when they're talking to you. You'll see men holding hands walking down the street. They're not boyfriend. They're just, that's just the way they are. And so, man, I was just right at home down there. I swear. I was hugging people right and left. The optometry. Okay, that's my interpreter on the left. Andrea, she's a graduate student. She was really good. This woman's from Harrisburg. This is the pastor's wife from up north. We were the ones who did the eye thing. I saw over 500 patients. We gave over 300 pairs of glasses. One day I saw 140 people, and that's, man, I was smoking. And as I said, it was frustrating in some ways because certain things I couldn't do. If I saw somebody who had cataracts, nothing could be done. And you're going blind. I didn't even do glaucoma tests because if I found out somebody had glaucoma, what was I going to do? Give them a lifetime supply of medication? No, but I took down a lot of antibiotic drops for infections, and we took down, as I said, lots of glasses that we could give out. And you would have the stories where people would come in, and an old woman said, I used to love to read my Bible, but I just can't see it anymore. I can't read my Bible anymore. So just a simple pair of reading glasses, now she can read her Bible. Stuff like that's really, really pretty cool when you're involved in that. This picture, I don't know how well you can see this. This picture actually has some sort of a defect in the film because it looks like I'm thinning on top. I don't know what's wrong with the film. The exposure was off or something in this. And this is me with a few of my buddies at one of the villages there. Okay, the fourth village we went to, and it was the one that was pretty much took levitation to get up to the top. I mentioned they didn't have appliances in the homes, and this is the one exception here. This is a refrigerator on the front porch laying on its back. Now, there's no power to that home. I have no idea what was stored in that refrigerator, and I was afraid to look. So that will just remain a mystery until I go back to the Amazon. This is a school. Again, if there was going to be a nice building in the village, it would be the school. They do take education seriously down there, and yet but they don't. I don't know how many are able to escape and get out into the wider world because it looks like it was just generation after generation would just stay in this village. Now, one thing I think was kind of interesting that happened down there is there was one village where they had a lot of eye infections. And I was just giving out lots of antibiotics that day for eye infections. And is that gross? Want me to cover it up? Why is that not? There we go. We'll cover it up. And that's appropriate because one thing happened there. One of the pastors, not the one I mentioned earlier, the other pastor was visiting some guy in his home. And this guy's legs were messed up where he couldn't get down the slope and get to the boat and have his eyes looked at. And I didn't hear about this till much later. But this man had a bad eye infection. His eyes were just all red and gooey and matted shut. And, the guy said, something's wrong with his eyes here. But the pastor didn't want to just leave him. And so he said, I'll pray over him and pray for God to heal him. And so for some reason that he thought was really a good idea, read the Bible or something, he said, I'll lay hands on him. So he takes this guy with a really bad eye infection and lays his hands on him and prays over him. Now, what do you think happened to that pastor? He got a horrible infection, and it went through 3/4 of our group. Most of my antibiotics that I took down there went to my fellow comrades because everybody came down with eye infection because, we're living so close together. So a sermon illustration for you right here. Okay? If there's an eye infection, just pray, don't lay hands on them, okay? That's just one thing you want to keep in mind. Now, all the medical work we were doing, the medical workers, the dental workers, the optometric side, we were doing this to help people, obviously. And we made sure they knew that we were doing this in the name of Jesus. We were doing this because Christ loved us and wants us to share his love with the world. We made sure they knew that. But the real reason we were doing this was to draw people in so that the evangelistic side of the mission could do their work. Because we had children's workers who were working with the kids, and we had people who were down there who had nothing to do with the medical side of it, but were talking to people about Jesus Christ and sharing the gospel. And that was really the most important part of the trip. And so the medical part, people would come from miles around to see an eye doctor. People would come from miles away. They'd get there 5 and 6 hours before dawn, lined up to see me. And that was so they could be seen by the evangelistic half of our team. And so we had children's workers down there. This is a big parachute or something. I don't know, Matt, have you ever used this? Got any idea what they did with this? Really, you're familiar with this, are you? Yeah, well, they did all kinds of things. I don't know. I didn't get to play. But that looks like a lot of fun unless it's in 110-degree weather. And then we had people who were down there who had, again, to go on a trip like this, you don't have to be a nurse or a doctor. These were just lay people from churches who went down there just to talk to people about Jesus Christ. And they would do one-on-one work. And we had over the time we were down there, we had 100 salvations. And, that I gave away, more than 300 pairs of glasses, but obviously that 100 salvations is the biggie. And the nice thing about how it was set up is that we didn't just say, okay, you prayed the prayer, congratulations, I'll see you in heaven, and we took off. We would have their name, everything filled out on the card, and we made sure the radicals got a hold of that. The radicals probably already knew them anyway. But if not, they were going to meet them and work with them and talk with them and disciple them, make sure that their commitment was real, help them to grow in Christ, and help them to share it with the people who we had talked to who hadn't made a commitment. So I feel like it wasn't just a drive-by thing. It was something where once we left, those 100 commitments could be worked with further, and it could continue to spread and grow even after we have gone. Because those radicals, folks, I'm telling you what, these young people, young Brazilian people, they were really dedicated. It's hard to give up 2 years of your life at any age, especially when you're young, to go and live with these people. Because the radicals came from towns and cities that were nice to live like that, but they were doing it for Christ. And it's the other missionaries from Brazil, man, they were theologically sound. They were dedicated. It was really a privilege to work with them, and it's good to know that what we did was just to help them as they continue the work that's being done there in Brazil. Now, on the way back, that's me. I'm just thinking about sermon illustrations that I have found over the course of the week right there. That looks like a beach, and then the river, and then the far shore. But that's actually two rivers coming together there. The Amazon River is really muddy and kind of brown in color. And right about the time you get to Manaus, the Black River comes in, the Negron River. And because of the sediment of the vegetation there, it is a black river. And for 13 miles, these rivers come together, but they don't mix. They just run along side by side. And it's really incredible to look at it. I don't know how well it comes across in the picture out there, but when you look at it, it's just amazing. For mile after mile, these two rivers have come together, and they just don't mix. And by golly, if that's not another sermon illustration, I don't know what is. But I thought that was kind of a fascinating thing to see. Now, the week, I felt like it was worth our time. We helped a lot of people on the dental side, the medical side, the optometric side. We talked to a lot of people about Christ, and 100 of them made commitments. So over a week's time, I think it was well worth our time. But there are 37,000 of these riverside villages, and we went to 4. So 10,000 of them have never been reached at all. So, there's still a lot of work out there, and I don't know if there's another trip from Illinois planned to go down there, but I know there's other trips that Baptists are making to go down there and help with this. And it is the sort of thing that really basically anybody can do. You don't have to be a doctor. That 82-year-old woman, what she did was she talked to the children. She took registration cards. She would go get coffee or whatever. I don't think anybody drank coffee, but things that anybody can do basically. And I think if you've never gone on one, you need to consider it. Really, it's something that really is helpful. They call this the I'll Go project. Get it? I'll Go, Illinois, I-L, Illinois, I'll. They explained it to me. I didn't really get it either, but if anybody has ever thought, I'd kind of like to go on a short-term mission, there are opportunities, and you can call, you can inquire about it, and not have to make a commitment until you're sure. But consider it. You can call the IBSA in Springfield anytime. I'm sure Matt can hook you up, or Joe Lawson, or you could get a hold of somebody who could hook you up with these projects. This medical doctor that went with us from Metropolis, he goes on these things twice a year. He's semi-retired, and he goes twice a year, and he's always looking for people to go with him. So, if you've ever thought maybe, I'd like to do it, but I don't know, or I'd like to do it, but it's going to be too hard. Hey, I had an air-conditioned boat. It wasn't that bad for me. And I'm an old man, so, there you go. So anyway, I just wanted to say it's something you may want to consider, and that was my trip. Now, since I am an expert on Brazil, and I've got 4 minutes left, does anybody have any questions? She asked me if I ever felt afraid. I never did. Once I got through customs, I felt a little weird there because, we're taking all these drugs through there. I was a little concerned there, but no, I never felt worried at all. And terrorism really hasn't been a problem in Brazil, so that wasn't a factor really either. Yeah, that's right. In this week's Illinois Baptist, a big article, Kathy Deasy, who was one of the two, she wrote that article, and so you can read about it there. I'm not featured very much in it, so I didn't say much about that. Yeah. Oh, it's hard for me to say exactly what it was, but I loved it, and I'm a picky eater. I went to Kazakhstan a few years ago, and they had kind of Asian food. I didn't like that. But Brazilian food, man, it was wonderful. And we had 2 Brazilian cooks on board who would cook for us. Lots of fruits and beans and rice. But if I had to describe it, I'd say most of the stuff was like Mexican food that wasn't really spicy. But it was good. They tell me the name of it, and I don't know, Anybody else? Yeah. Well, Lions International gave me some, actually in Indiana, and they gave me some, but most of my glasses came from people dropping them off at my office through the years. They drop them off in a box, and I put them downstairs, and then when this trip was coming up, I started going through them and separating them and labeling them and all that sort of thing. So donations. So they were all used glasses. Yeah. Yeah, the women's sleeping quarters was like the men's in that it was all jam-packed, but they didn't have to keep moving stuff back and forth. Theirs was all set up for the week, and so it was luxurious compared to the 4 men. Stupid women. Anybody else? And yes, I did miss my wife very badly, because once we left Manaus, there was no cell phone coverage. And so it was like being in college again where we couldn't talk or see each other or anything. And she remembered that she loved me after all. So it made the trip worthwhile. Anybody else? Yes. Oh, what are you going to say? Well, I didn't bring a snake back. I didn't actually see a whole lot of animals, and because it was the dry season. So there wasn't much animals to see. There were a lot of river dolphins. They're pink in color. And most dolphins are seawater, but these were freshwater dolphins, and they would follow our boat around. So a lot of dolphins. And at night, the captain would shine a light along the shore, and you can see the eyes of caiman, the crocodiles shining back at you. But I never saw any caiman during the day. And the villages are all kind of dirt beat down. They're cleared out, so it's not like you see, giraffes walking through the village or anything. There was a pet monkey in one of the villages who rode a dog. I kept trying to get a picture of that, but it didn't come out. So I thought I'd draw a picture. That didn't come out either. Anybody else? Last chance. You've got a Brazilian expert right before you. You don't want to let this chance go to... Okay, well, what's that? Spiders. Yeah, there were spiders. But, yeah, there were spiders. Big spiders, too. Yeah. And I've never seen that kind of eye infection before they had down there either. Oh, man, it was ugly. I don't know what that was. Lizards? I guess so. I didn't see any. I think they say like in the Amazon forest, a huge percentage of the world's species are there. So if you got a question about an animal, pretty much it's probably there, of some sort. It's just off. But we didn't go deep into the jungle because I'm a big chicken. Mosquitoes. Now that's a good question because we had to get malaria shots and yellow fever, all this kind of shots and everything, and we were told to bring mosquito netting and make sure we're spraying ourselves down with DEET and everything. But really, the mosquitoes we didn't notice very much, and I don't know whether it was because of the dry season or because we were sprayed so heavily with this stuff. But mosquitoes weren't much of a factor. The villagers just got food and lived. They would fish and they would forage in the forest, but they didn't really have jobs. There would be a few people along the river who would have like a little trading post. Their home would be a trading post. And so you could go there and get some items. But in the villages, nobody really had a job except for teacher. They had schools, and that was pretty much the only job that a person would have. Tourists? No, not at all. In Manaus, I guess there was probably some because that's a bigger city. We went to a shopping mall there, but in the Amazon, no. And there weren't many boats going up and down it or anything, and there were no tourists certainly in the villages at all. It's just they just way upstream, Yeah, small schools. And it would be for the village and the surrounding villages. So I don't know how many villages would come to this central place for school. They would walk, or else I'd take a canoe across from a village from the other side of the river. And when I say canoe, it's a rowboat, not a dugout or anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Manaus is kind of you've got the Amazon starts on the Atlantic Ocean and goes almost all the way across South America, right? So Manaus is about a third of the way in. So we went to Manaus, and then we went upstream 30 hours. So here. So we didn't go, we weren't anywhere near the very source of the Amazon, which I think is in Peru. But we were far from Manaus, which was the biggest city, you're going to find. We were going the wrong direction if you wanted to find civilization. Last chance. Anybody? Did they have what? Crafts? We didn't really see any. I think most of it was food and stuff. They just cook. I didn't really notice any kind of crafts of any sort. There may have been some that I just didn't see. All right. Well, let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we do thank you so much that you loved us to die for us, and help us to realize that you died for others too. You died for the Muslim terrorists. You died for the people in the Amazon who've never heard of you. You died for all mankind. And Lord, if you loved them enough to die for them, we should love them enough to try to reach them. So Lord, help us to have the desire to help. If not going, then at least by praying or supporting in some way or the other. Let us show our love for the people that you loved. In the name of Jesus the Christ we pray. Amen.